Hello gardeners, I'm Joe Gadbois with Greenland Garden Center, one of the managers here, and today I'm going to show you bonsai and some of the basics of growing bonsai. I'd like to start by answering the question, what is bonsai? Now there's this misconception out there that bonsai is actually a type of plant, and it's really a style of growing a plant. Bonsai is an ancient Japanese art form. The word literally translates to grown in a container. So just about any woody plant, tree or shrub, even a succulent, can be used in bonsai. And the goal is just to recreate nature in miniature form. Now, when you're selecting a bonsai, it's important to understand the difference between tropical and temperate bonsai. Tropical being plants that like to be warm throughout the year, and temperate being plants that need a cold winter dormancy. So this guy here, this is a Japanese juniper, and this is an example of a temperate plant that requires a cold winter dormancy. So you see these for sale all over the place, including here at Greenland. But a lot of people don't realize, very difficult to grow as a house plant. You want to have these guys really growing outside for the best results. And you know, something like this juniper is actually hardy outdoors here, so if you sink the pot in the ground, you can overwinter it that way. Obviously, for somebody who's just getting into bonsai, it's a little bit simpler to focus on the tropical types, okay? So this guy here, the Fukian tea, is one example of a tropical type. This one has put on quite a bit of growth, so I'll show you how to prune it later on in the video. But something like this is quite simple to grow just as a house plant. And bonsai are really popular right now as really a component of modern home decor. Really not that much more difficult to grow than a lot of other house plants. You want to position them somewhere with bright light, that's really important. So ideally in a sunny windowsill, so they're getting a couple hours of direct sun. If you want something that will grow well in lower light, try something like a ficus bonsai. They don't necessarily need direct light. If you want something that's really easy, that does not need a lot of water and will forgive you for underwatering, go for something like a jade bonsai or a dwarf jade or mini jade bonsai. Those guys are really good if you don't like to water a lot. But in general, if you're not growing a succulent bonsai, water as the soil starts to dry out. Generally keep it evenly moist. And for fertilizer, generally we fertilize during the spring and summer growing season, and not at all or very little during the winter time. You can use the same fertilizer that you use on your other house plants, or you can also use an organic slow-release bonsai fertilizer. This is very simple to use because all you do is follow the directions on the package and top dress the soil with this about once a month, and it will automatically feed the plant as you water it. So that is a good option. When it comes to repotting bonsai, you can use ceramic pots like this one here. You can use plastic pots if you want, but generally bonsai are grown in decorative pots. That's part of the whole package of, you know, having a very attractive plant in your home. You can also use what are called mica pots, and these are made from silica. It feels like plastic. It's very durable, lasts a long time, often cheaper than ceramic pots. And these are particularly good for bonsai that you're growing outdoors because they don't tend to crack or get damaged if you're overwintering them outside, if they're freezing and thawing and that sort of thing. Definitely make sure that your bonsai pot has drainage holes. Now, when you're selecting the right pot for your bonsai, the general rule of thumb that bonsai artists use is they try to go for a pot the height of which is about equal to the thickness of the trunk at the base. Now, that will vary sometimes. Obviously here, that's not the case. And then the width of the bonsai pot is generally equal to 2/3 the height of the tree. So again, that is, you're not always totally adhering to that rule, but it's a good place to kind of start when you're selecting the size of your bonsai pot. Now, repotting with bonsai is generally done every couple of years. You're doing it when the bonsai becomes very root bound. One tool that bonsai artists use with repotting is the Root Rake. And this guy has a rake end and sort of a spade end. And what you can do every year in the spring, it's a good idea to check just by gently sort of lifting the soil with this end of the root rake. You can see that the soil here easily pulls away from the edge of the pot. There's no roots growing here. So this guy does not need to be repotted. If, however, you find that you have this solid mass of roots that is encircling the pot, then you know it's time to repot. And it's almost always done in the springtime. And when you repot, you're using the rake side of this tool to actually pull all of the soil off the roots and trim some of the roots off if necessary to fit into your pot. The soil that is used for bonsai by professionals is this mineral-based soil, which contains several different volcanic minerals. This is what the real pros like to use. But you can also just use a good tropical potting mix and just add some extra drainage material such as perlite to it to make sure that you have really good drainage in your soil. And of course, you can top dress with decorative gravel, rocks, moss, anything that you like as well to make it look really good. Now, when it comes to pruning bonsai, this is something that is done continuously to shape the tree, to train it into the form that you want. Most bonsai artists kind of have a vision to begin with, and that can take a number of years to achieve. With this guy, you can see a lot of growth has been put on, and it doesn't look particularly good. So it's starting to lose the shape and the form that we're trying to train it into. There are many bonsai pruning tools that you can get. I'm going to show you just a couple basic ones today for people who are starting. The Bonsai Shear, this is a Japanese-made shear. I would recommend that you buy, if you're really getting into bonsai, purchase the most expensive, highest quality tools that you can afford. The reason for that is this is very, very sharp. It's going to give you a nice clean cut, and the cleaner the cut, the less likely you're going to have issues with diseases getting into that cut, and the less likely that you're going to have unsightly scars. So this is your basic bonsai pruning shear. This is what we will be using today. It's used for most pruning jobs. We also have a leaf cutter. This is designed for smaller precision pruning. So if you want to remove a leaf or a very small branch, you can get right in there and do that. And one technique that bonsai artists will use to get smaller leaves so that they're more in scale with the plant is they'll actually defoliate the entire plant. But we won't be doing that today. With the bonsai shears, I'm going to go in and, depending on what we're working with here, so in this case, I think I'm going to almost completely reduce this. You can see here where there's actually a bud right in here. So where the leaf axils are, there's a bud. This is going to continue to grow out in this direction once I cut. But what's going to happen is if I cut here, this is going to cause this to bush out and give you more of a full sort of head here. This is kind of what we're going for. If I wanted to get really picky, I'd even come in here and reduce this, and reduce this. And this is all going to fill in really nicely. Here we have a couple flowers forming. I'm going to leave that. This one I'm going to reduce as well. So I'm going to bring that back to there. And I think I'm going to bring this back. So again, what I'm doing with these cuts is I'm encouraging the tree to fill out more rather than create this sort of lanky growth. And this is eventually going to give us a nice, natural looking miniature version of what this tree would look like if it were growing in the wild. So I won't go into super specific details on pruning in this video, but that gives you sort of the general idea of what you're doing. You do also want to remove anything that's not budding out. So like this piece of wood here, I would cut off. And you can see how nicely these pruners cut. If you were going to take off an entire larger branch, then you would use something like a knob cutter. So these are your knob cutters. What they have is a concave blade on them, and so when you're cutting off a branch, it leaves that concave wound, which heals a lot faster versus when you're using a regular pair of pruners. So that's just another tool that you can use again for removing an entire branch to the trunk. That's what you would use there. So that's kind of the basics on pruning bonsai. Now, other than that, that's pretty much it as far as growing bonsai. It can get a lot more complicated than that if you want to really get into it. But to start off with, that gives you a good general idea. There's lots of information on the internet if you want to look into that further. And we will be offering bonsai classes here at Greenland as well. Be sure to check out greenlandgarden.com for information on our classes and all kinds of other information on gardening and lifestyle. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great videos on both indoor and outdoor gardening. And thank you so much for watching. I'm Joe Gadbois for Greenland Garden Center.